Vision of the Nagual. Yo, what's going on? It's someone that's no one, and welcome back to today's report. Today's report is coming from Toltec Warrior off his own blog. When this happened, a number of years ago, before 2015, the drug used was Salvia Divinorum at a dose of a good hit of 50x extract, the route of administration, smoked, and the setting in a room with a friend. So here we are back with another Salvia report, which a bunch of people normally do request this, so it isn't a huge surprise. But with this report, it definitely is a lot more about the feeling and realization of the loss of ego, rather than what is experienced visually or even chronologically, if that makes sense. If you've ever had an ego death before, this report does a really good job at describing that process and what the overall meaning behind it may be. It's a first-time Salvia experience that demonstrates well you don't know what you may be in for when you go into something like Salvia, but often it can end up feeling like the experience of a lifetime. And if you don't know much about Salvia, no worries, we'll break it down some more at the end. I'm sure you'll enjoy this one, so without further ado, let's dive right into this. A number of years ago, I had a trip on Salvia Divinorum that I was not likely to forget. I had been researching Salvia for some while. It is an entheogen originally used by the Mazatec Indians of Oaxaca, Mexico, and healing and divination. Salvia is a member of the sage family and is often loosely translated as diviner sage or seer sage. The main psychoactive ingredient is a diterpenoid called salvinorin A, which is a potent k-opioid and D2 receptor agonist. Because of the legal status of this psychoactive substance, Salvia Divinorum is legal in the UK and can be purchased from head shops. I bought an extract of salvia, which was described as times 50 strength. This was an elixir produced through the process of adding salvinorin A to the crushed leaf of the plant, making available something 50 times the strength of the leaf. I sat down with a friend one night, prepared to ingest this times 50 extract. It is smoked in a bong or a pipe, and for my trip, I borrowed a bubble bong, which looks something like this. I warned my friend that it might be a strong trip as he was intending to have a go as well. I filled the bowl of the bong with the extract, lit it, and drew back on the pipe. I never even got to finish the bowl. As soon as the smoke entered my lungs, the Salvia Divinorum kicked in and took hold. I blacked out immediately. When I came to, I lunged and stood up. I was then standing over my friend, staring at him wildly. At first I didn't recognize him, and then gradually his name returned to me. The problem was, though, I had no idea who I was. Everything had gone. My name, my identity, everything about me had dissolved. I was stood there staring at him. I vocalized all this, to his great amusement. Eventually, my identity began to return, and I started coming back to consciousness, at which point I felt a sharp pain in my thumb. I was still holding onto the smoldering bowl of the pipe. I lunged again, falling over on the other side of the room, while screaming in agony, with the water and the contents of the burning bong spilling on the carpet. It took me a little while to recover. It had been an intense experience, but only lasted a quarter of an hour. After the experience had worn off sufficiently, I started discussing what had happened. It was a surprising event, to actually lose my name, and with it, my identity. It was horrifying. The trip felt like everything had been stripped away from me, along with my internal dialogue. The description of who I was simply was not there. Don Juan in the books of Castaneda describes how our world and perceptions are created and upheld by an internal dialogue. He also considered everything in our world to have a proper name. The naming of things was intrinsic to upholding and maintaining this internal dialogue. So, for me, when my name was no longer available, neither was my identity. When we are in the state of the unborn, we are without identity. When we enter the world, we come with a gender. The first thing we are given is our name. As life progresses, we are then subsequently given attributes as our roles develop. The imprinting continues all our life, and we become enmeshed in our world, indivisible from it. The stripping away that the Salvia experience had on me was returning me to this original state. This place of innocence was fundamentally without need for identity or labeling of any kind. For a brief moment, I was in the place of pure consciousness and being. Considering its legality, Salvia Divinorum is a powerful drug and should be treated with respect. Having said that, the plant showed me something of the truth about the nature of reality and about the nature of myself. Okay, so salvia, one of the strongest naturally occurring hallucinogens out there, and on top of that, it is legal still in many areas, especially ones that have spiritual ties to the plant. But salvia itself is often regarded as typically weird to most people, and not even by subjective standards alone. Even when you start looking into the makeup of this substance and how it reacts from a pharmacological standpoint, it differs greatly compared to most common psychedelics, even dissociatives, as it has been compared to that class as well. I commonly hear it being compared to DMT as far as intensity goes and how far you can go in a trip, but the nature of this substance tends to be really unpredictable as far as what can happen in a trip. Salvia will act on k-opioid receptors and partially on dopamine receptors, which no other known hallucinogen is acting in such a way, as far as we know so far. But because of this, the effects can vary from psychedelic, dissociative, and even delirium-like. There have been many accounts before where users take salvia and end up in a very uncomforting, dissociative state, often with the surrounding theme being psychedelic and the feeling almost delirious. A good example of this is turning into a conveyor belt while going through an ego death. This is a classic example, but it can be any inanimate object, like a lamp, maybe a fridge, or a shovel maybe. Just anything can be possible. You can just imagine how that might be though. You forget anything about you that existed, and you simply exist as that object. But you still have some human thoughts. Though you don't recognize it as your own as a human. You're pretty much simply this form of consciousness as this object, which, to many people, they report feels as if it's just wrong, that things shouldn't be this way, or that something isn't right. This may have been the case in today's report, but maybe it is the case you don't even recall your ego death, rather it's something you just go through, feel, and experience, and the afterwards feeling is what's heavy for you. Are there been reports where users pretty much go on these full-on hallucinogenic trips, filled with entities, various sceneries, themes, and all sorts of things? Like I said, this substance isn't limited by any means, but often users won't have a say-so as to where the trip is going to go, but a lot of the experiences often do end up having a weird or dark theme to it, making it less desirable with repeated use. But here's where I want to bring up a couple of our past reports and see how they compare to today's experience. Now, the last report we did on salvia was Positively Positive by Ricker, where his experience turned out to be a bit different. Now, note here that the potency was probably much lower for Ricker, but you can guess by the title, his experience was overall favorable. I would say that there was some ego dissolution as well, but in a different manner. Ricker hallucinated that he was a child again, back in his hometown, where he played with children and experienced that free youthful bliss you get as a child. But you can see how this is ego dissolving in a way. This experience took him away from his life as a 57-year-old and brought him back to his roots. The next report I want to bring up is Becoming a Machine Escape by Josikins. Now, this report better details what full-on ego dissolution may look like. Josikins used a 15x extract in this report after a year of no usage, but the reverse tolerance salvia can present still seemed to play a role in influencing this trip, as she reported she didn't expect to go as far as she did in this. But to keep it simple, After hitting a bowl, she got smacked out of normal reality and quickly forgot who she was. Instead, her reality became that she was this giant rotating cog descending faster and faster into an abyss. Though she did lose memory of herself, she did hold on to the fact that this was something to be waited out, and I believe because of this, she didn't have a really rough time. I feel that Toltec warrior may have experienced something similar, but even if someone can't recall it, the feeling of ego loss would still remain the same. But we're going to end it off there for today. I think this was a solid look into Salvia and what could potentially happen, which ego loss is a pretty big theme with Salvia. But if you want to see more on Salvia or any reports at all, let me know in the comments below and we can do that. If you have a report of your own you want me to read, send it to the email NoOneSubmitReport@gmail.com and I can do that. Do me a favor, if you did enjoy this video, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, follow the socials, share the video. It's been someone that's no one, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.